We're so pleased that Ryan Huska would find the time to join us down here, the new head coach of the Calgary Flames. And Husk, welcome to the show. I got a nice welcome here, it looked like, when you walked in.
Very nice. Thank you for having me, Rod.
How has your life changed since becoming the head coach of the Calgary Flames?
Not too much, honestly.
Is that right?
The people here are great. I think there's times where you go out now where you get recognized a little bit more, for better or worse. But not much. I mean, that's one of the great things about Calgary. They're a very passionate fan base. They really love their team, but they also have a tremendous amount of respect for people's privacy and their own time. And I found that really cool about the city. But other than maybe putting a little bit more work in the preparation side of things, there's not a ton that's changed as of yet.
Well, I'll tell you what, the interesting thing for me, I've been around here, you asked how long we've been here. It's been 2 years that I've been doing the show out of Calgary, and I went to college here at Mount Royal, so I know the people very well. But a lot said to me, Ryan Huska, who's Ryan Huska? I'm like, how do you not know who Ryan Huska is? You've been here since 2014 with the organization.
Yes.
And you're a Calgary guy. I see you go to the Stamps games, your kids are involved. You love the city.
Love it.
Yeah.
And I talk often about this has been my favorite spot to be by far. There's a lot of great things about it. It's a big city, but it's got the small city feel. And I think as someone that's had a young family that was able to grow up here, I don't think there's a lot of cities around North America or NHL cities that match Calgary and what it has to offer. So it's a tremendous place to be.
Well, it's a perfect fit. And before I talk about the task in front of you, this has just been gnawing at me. Your hockey DB says you're from Cranbrook. Are you like a Steve Yzerman, born there but left 5 days in, or are you a Cranny guy?
No, I'm a Steve Yzerman guy.
Oh, you are?
So I think I was 4 years old. My dad got transferred. He was an RCMP member. He got transferred to Trail. So I always say my hometown is Trail, BC.
Okay.
So that's where I grew up until I left to play hockey in Kamloops.
Okay, so not too far away then, at least.
No, we're close. Kootenay kid.
Yeah, exactly. So now, I've been watching this Flames thing, and you've always been not a under-the-radar guy, but a quiet guy, if I'm fair in saying that. I mean, and we were with the Team Canada 2012 World Juniors. But when you were introduced as head coach of the Flames, you just let it rock in terms of your personality.
Yeah.
And I thought that was awesome.
Well, thank you. I think for me in this position, because I didn't have the background that a lot of other head coaches would maybe have, whether it's a playing career or a lengthy coaching career, I had to work my way up through a lot of different channels. And I knew that was going to be part of my process to get eventually to this point. So I had to do a lot of learning along the way. I had to do a lot of listening along the way. And I think at times maybe that's why I would come across a little quieter and behind the scenes as maybe some other guys. But I felt like that was part of my development and who I was and how I had to get myself to the point where I could be considered for head coaching jobs.
Sure, but you were saying some funny things, and I listened to all the interviews. I'm like, Ryan's funnier than I thought. Too. That's what I say about letting your personality out.
Yeah.
But your story about Colin Pedersen and when you came through as a kid with your minor hockey team, would you relate that here? That kind of told the world how important this job is to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's the Western Canada thing. I grew up in BC, and we spent summers here in Calgary. My uncle used to live here, so we would come every summer. I would go to Callaway Park. Very familiar with the city, the zoo, everything that young kids' families did, we would do in Calgary. So we were very familiar with the city. And as a young hockey player, when I had that opportunity to have breakfast with those two guys, Joel and Colin, I thought it was the coolest thing ever.
And how did that come about that you got to have?
Our team won a contest in Trail. I don't know how we did it. I can't even remember what the contest was, but our coach and general manager signed us up for something, and we obviously had to either sell something or do something.
Right.
But we won, and we got an opportunity to have breakfast with two members of the Calgary Flames at the time, which for small town boys was the coolest thing going. And it's something that I've never forgotten, and it's always been a reminder for me that no matter where you are in life or how you end up, you always give back. And the Flames alumni in Calgary are probably second to none, I would say, for the amount of things they do and how they put themselves out there for their community. It's pretty awesome.
Not just NHL, but pro sport. Those boys are going every day.
All the time.
I can't believe what they do. So then to return and be the head coach of the Flames with that, what were you, 12 when you had breakfast? Did you say Pee-wee?
Adam, so I
even
think
younger.
it's like 9 or 10, whatever that would be.
Right, so just a huge honor, and I know you're a humble guy, so I won't, we all know how big of a job it is and how proud he is to have it. But then, as you know, I'm friends with a lot of the organization. They said the players really wanted you in there. They went to bat for you. That's got to mean a lot.
Well, it does, and I think leading up to it, there was so much unknown, and there was a lot of gray. And I would get texts from some of the players, and they would kind of make their support known for me. And sometimes when you're not really sure of the direction as to the way things are going to go, or how you want to present yourself, or how you want to put forward, when you get comments from your players that they really hope it works out for you, those are things you don't forget either. And Michael Backlund was one guy that I did a lot of talking with back and forth, and I knew I had his support and he was in my corner, which when you have a guy that's been your longest tenured guy around, he's seen a lot of different head coaches, he's unfortunately had to deal with too many head coaches. It was something that was special to me, and I appreciated it, and I made him know that. And I think it just gives you the confidence that, hey, I am ready for this job, and this is the time for me, and we're going to make things work here.
He's one of the few that would predate you in this outfit.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's a funny story with him. Like Bruce Hamilton took him in Kelowna in the European draft, and he didn't come over to start the year. And it was kind of the year we were building to win Memorial Cup, and we were really hopeful that we could convince him to come and play for our team. Didn't happen. But World Junior time came that year, and there was a little bit of rumblings that he might want to stay, but he needed to get himself out of his contract back in Sweden. So Daryl Sutter at the time was the GM of the Flames, signed him, played him that game. He made a little bit of money, enough money to get himself out of his contract, and then he was sent to us in Kelowna. So I got to spend a few months at least with him and get to know him as a young 19-year-old to see what he was all about. So it's a pretty cool story how everything kind of comes full circle.
It's the way it's supposed to go. And, you hope you end up in a great place, and you are. But looking back, we're both Dub guys. We're both Dub junkies, if you will.
Yep.
Best league, best
Absolutely.
junior league on the planet. And so Kelowna and Kamloops are very special to you. And I got to ask you about, the synergies with Jerome McGinley coming on board here. You've known him longer than anybody else around here has known him.
Yeah.
Talk about that relationship, if you don't mind.
We have a good relationship, and it keeps, the full circle thing keeps coming. Like, I played one game in the NHL, and who was it against? It was against Jerome McGinley and the Calgary Flames. So there's a lot of cool things that kind of, I don't know, feel like they lead you to a certain point in your life, and this is one for me. But Jerome and I were roommates for 1 year. It was Nolan Baumgartner, myself, and Jerome were roommates for his first year in Kamloops. As a 16-year-old, he came in. So we have a pretty good relationship for sure, and you stay in touch along the way. And it was really neat to see how involved he was right away and how into it he is. And the conversations that you have with him about our prospects, our players, the direction he thinks the team should go, he's in it. And I find that's the coolest thing. So as much as he may spend a lot of his time in Kelowna this year still with his team at the rink there, he's fully in. And I think Craig's going to enjoy having him around. He's a sounding box for him to bounce ideas off of at times. And with the experience Jerome has, he's won at all sorts of different levels. He understands the game in a different way than maybe someone else might, because of the level that he was able to achieve or attain as a player. So he's a huge asset for our team, and just someone I think that's going to help make our team and our organization much better.
What do you think made him want to get into it in this capacity now?
One, I think Connie. If Connie wasn't the general manager, I'm not sure. It might have been a harder sell for him to come back. But he's got a great relationship with Craig. They were line mates for a lot of years. And I think they have that type of relationship where they can say, no, you're an idiot, or yes, I agree with you, I'm not doing that. But I think they respect each other enough to know that they both have the Flames' best interest at heart. And I think that's what's so important. So those two guys having a great working relationship is going to be real important. And then having myself and Jerome have a bit of a connection, it's easy for me to go to him and say, hey, what are you seeing with the way our team's playing? And I know the feedback that I get from him is going to come from the right spot.
Right.
Yeah.
I promise the audience I'll get to your questions in a second. I've got a million here, and we don't have Ryan for too long, but you're a bright guy. I'm sure you've realized that you're in a great spot in that you're not taking over a terrible team. Most first time NHL coaches are taking over a bad team.
Yeah.
That's how they got the job. That's not the case for you.
No, not at all. And that's another reason why I feel really privileged to have this opportunity. And we went at it right from day one that we're returning all of our players. Now, the only one that isn't in that group anymore is Tyler Toffoli, who's been moved on prior to the draft. But our expectation, and it still is that we're returning everybody. And then over the course of the season, I truly believe that the guys that we're doing a lot of talking about are going to re-sign with us. And that's my belief, and that's my optimistic look on the way things are. And I feel it's a really good thing because we're going to have a bunch of motivated players coming in. One, because a lot of guys, oftentimes in contract years, they want to set themselves up for a nice payday at the end of it.
Yeah.
And number two, we have a lot of guys that weren't happy with the way things went last year. So there is a bit of a chip on the shoulder. And I really enjoy the conversations that I've had over the summer with our players because they're edgy. And I feel like they're ready to come back and they're ready to, if you want to call it, make amends for last year.
It's a good group, isn't it? They kind of get banged on unfairly, I think.
They are a good group and good people. And oftentimes when you have a bunch of guys that want to be around each other, they enjoy each other's company, not happy with the way things went together, and they want to make it better. I think you're going to see some pretty good things from this team this year.
Okay, as promised, some questions. Well, first, let me just say, my last question. Did it come up at the news conference? Because I didn't see it all about a captain.
Yeah.
It did?
It did.
What are you going to do?
We'll have a captain this year. I mean,
you know who it is?
There's a number of people that we have in mind and we've thrown around a lot. There's a lot that comes into it. There really is. And it's the relationship that you have with the player. That's first and foremost. Is that player willing to step out from the crowd at times and make the uncomfortable decisions and maybe say some of the uncomfortable things that have to be said? But is the commitment there on a daily basis too is important. So we have to find a guy that's kind of all in as well. So we hope to have something done sooner than later. That doesn't necessarily mean it's before camp. It doesn't necessarily mean it's during the exhibition season, but we'd like to have something and someone in place sooner than later.
Forgive me for asking, but will this be coach appointed or a team vote, or is that a bantam hockey thing and you don't do that in the NHL?
We're gonna, as a staff, it's something that we'll do, including all of our management team as well.
Okay.
So it's such a big decision for an organization. You want to have the right person that's going to represent you, your franchise, and help bring the team along. So there's a lot of weight that goes onto this person's shoulder. So it's not a job that someone can take lightly.
So the aforementioned Glenn in medicine hat.
Yeah.
He says, hey, Ryan, can you recall what it looked like from the bench in Kelowna when Michael Stone hit Michael Backlund in the 2009 WHL Championship game? They became teammates with the Flames.
That was the hardest hit I still think I've ever seen. And the one thing, quick little thing about that story, Jamie Benn, I could probably say it right now. He was injured at the time, and he just came back from an injury. And I would go up to him before he played that game and say, Jamie, are you sure you're good to play here? And the way Jamie Benn is, he was like, yep, good to play, no problem. And then he would skate away from you. So he didn't want you to spend too much time with him. And you almost had a feeling that maybe he wasn't quite right yet. But that hit happened. Michael's helmet went flying off, and the first person in to challenge Stoney was Jamie Benn. So that's the type of team that we had. Thankfully, when Bax got to the bench, he was just winded, but it was one of the hardest hits I've ever seen.
Wow.
And finding the footage of that hit, it kind of makes you, it cringe when you see it
felt
happen.
it.
It was one of the bigger hits for sure, and probably the hardest hit that Bax has ever taken.
Rich in Edmonton says, I was told by Ottawa sports guy AJ Jakovic that you won't find a better guy in hockey than Ryan Huska, so I believe it, and I'm an Oilers fan, so not easy to say about a Flames coach. Well, that's nice. You would know AJ from
We got
your
another BC guy, too.
Yeah, that's right.
Where I know him from, so there's a connection along the way for sure. He's done a very good job, and it's nice to see he's still continuing to do well.
Monty in Saskatoon wants to know, when does training camp start in Calgary?
Yeah, our young guys are the 13th of September. We go through the prospects camp in Penticton, so they play the Oilers, the Canucks, and the Jets. It's a great tournament that they put on, and Penticton does a fantastic job. And then our players here are testing on the 20th, and then we're on the ice on the 21st, and then it's off to the races from that point.
Roger in Calgary says, Ryan, can we see a fourth line speed/rookie line versus a traditional checking line? Have you got
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think that is the line that's going to be made up of all younger players, but what I do envision is having the younger players sprinkled throughout if they're ready for it. I think that's something that's important, but when you look at today's NHL, and this is a great question, a lot of the fourth lines that you see nowadays are guys that are they're not your prototypical tough guys that they used to be years ago. They're guys that are edgy and they're hard to play against, but they can all skate. And that's one thing that we'll try to do is put together a line that nobody likes to play against because they're always in your face. Whether that's younger guys, older guys, that doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't really matter where a player falls, but an example of a guy who I could see fit in that role is Walker Dugan.
I was just going to say that. Love that kid.
He's very,
first ever South Dakota in an NHL history, right?
Isn't it? I love it. Stories like that are awesome. But he really skates. Also has the opportunity to be bounced up the lineup a little bit. So he's one of those guys that over the course of the summer, you're really hoping comes in and really grabs a spot. So I want to say you're pushing for him for sure, like the rest of our players I am. But you want them to come in and say, this is my time. I'm not being sent somewhere else this year.
I heard he's got far more sway in your room than a guy his age should.
Yeah.
That the guys love him that much.
And I think with Walker, maybe the way you describe me a little bit, he's like that? He's very quiet. He doesn't say an awful lot. He doesn't ruffle feathers. He comes to work every day. And then as he spends more time, you start to see a little bit of his personality come out. So I have a lot of time for him, for sure.
Tons of questions have come in, and they're very positive.
That's good.
Yeah, nice, right? And I could say you haven't coached a game, but that's not true yet. I heard you on the radio hoping to scrub those 2 games.
Yeah.
You getting any help with that?
No. Apparently they're in the record book.
Still on the record?
Yeah, we're starting behind the 8 ball a little bit.
What's the home opener? What's the season opener?
Against the Jets on the 11th of October.
Ooh, yeah. Right into the fire right from the start.
Yeah.
From Enor in Winnipeg, I believe is where Enor says, Ryan, how will you utilize Jonathan Huberdeau differently this year to get his confidence and production back up again?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I think with Jonathan, there was so much that went on outside of the game. And we were off the air talking about the market in Florida, where it's a little different than the market that a player sees in Canada in regards to the media attention for one. The attention that the players get around the city is another one. And he's been in Florida the whole time. So that trade happens kind of shockingly to him. And now all of a sudden he's in a hockey hotbed. So there's a huge adjustment there. But in regards to his on-ice play, I think over the course of this summer, he's got himself back to a point mentally where he's excited and ready to go. And he is a guy that when you give him a little bit of freedom and maybe you up his minutes a touch from time to time when he's really playing the right way, he's going to create. And we know from the past that we've seen some of the plays that he's capable of making. When you give him a little bit of rope, as long as he's working on the other areas that you want to see him compete team-wise, he's going to help generate for you. And I'm not saying he's going to be a 115-point left winger again, because that was an incredible year. The highest scoring left winger of all time or whatever that was the season he put up a few years ago. But you're going to see inflated totals for sure, because he is that type of player. And let's be honest, when you're that caliber player, you don't forget how to play. So I'm super excited to see what he's going to do coming back this year. And he's going to get put in situations where we're going to count on him. We're going to look for him in a leadership role where there's going to be a little bit more pressure from me and our staff on him. And I think in turn, he's going to respond in a real positive way.
Well, that's the thing about coaching. You've seen what he's capable of, so the question's just getting him back to that.
It's funny. One of our coaches, Dan Lambert, who's new to our team this year, when we made that trade last year, he texted me. He said, I can't believe you guys were able to get Huberdeau out of there. He said, I think he put up in 3 games against Nashville, whatever it was, like 18 points against us. Like he felt he was that good of a player from what he saw. And we've seen it too. So again, it's something that when you have a fresh slate, everything is new. You start from, right from a good base this year and you move forward. You don't look back. He'll take off. I know he will.
I mention it a lot. I don't know how much you do, but the 2012 World Juniors that I called the games and you coached, he was on that team, as were Mark Scheifele and a few. It was a cool team.
Awesome.
Yeah. What do you remember about that?
Lots. Well,
it was a lot of fun.
Unfortunately, the one memory that I really stands out to me is the game against Russia, and I still get a little frustrated about that one. It just everything went against us to start with. I remember the last goal they scored really bothered me because I felt like
the 5-0 goal?
We stopped skating a little bit on that play, and then all of a sudden we're chipping away. The crowd's in the building, and we made it close. But that was the one thing. It was such a great team. I felt like we should have won that tournament too.
It was only 11 years ago, but you're over it.
Oh, still bitter.
No, you're coming back. What was
That's true.
They had a 5-0 lead.
Yeah.
Came back and tied it.
Yeah.
5-5.
Lost by 1.
Well, I called it on Fan 960, and that I swore the Saddle Dome roof was shaking.
It was nuts in that building, which is one of the coolest things. And it reminded me of our series against Dallas 2 years ago. That building was crazy. And that's one of the things that you do love about the city. They think the game really well. So during the regular season, a lot of times, it's not quite as noisy as maybe some other buildings because they are watching the game and they understand the game. Then playoff time comes, they just find a different level. They're still cerebral and thinking the game and watching what's going on, but there's just a different energy level about it, which that game against Dallas was pretty cool to be a part of as well.
You talked about the players and the media pressure. How are you dealing with it?
Yeah, fine. Honestly, I think, again, that goes to the market that we have in Calgary. And there's going to be days where there's tough questions for sure. And there's going to be stretches where the team's not playing the way we want to play, or we're not putting the product on the ice that we expect to have out there. And then I'll have to answer to that. But all you can do is be honest with what you're seeing, and then everything else it's fine. That's what people want. People want honesty. They want to know the team's going to work hard. They want to see guys that compete really hard, and they want to see us play with a real good pace to our game. And then, as I mentioned, the crowd here, they'll get behind our team when they see that. And that's what we're going to do this year.
They want a hardworking team, right?
For sure.
And an honest team.
Western Canada, that's what it's about. Guys get out there and they work, and they want to and expect their team to do the same thing.
Well, and the interesting part about that is, I spend the other 50% of my time in football, and I picked up a phrase in Florida that was, it's not X's and O's, it's Freddy's and Joe's. And I think today's player wants an open door policy with his coach. And you said in the news conference, you said things will be different around here. And you didn't really go any further. You didn't have to.
No.
But how much will they be different?
Well, in my opinion, there'll be a lot. I mean, I just feel like today's guy, they need to know every day where they stand. And maybe that's from me having younger kids that are kind of getting towards the age of some of our players. They need to know where they stand all the time. And that might just be walking by them and saying, hey, I liked your game last night, keep doing that. And then the player can put his mind at ease as to where am I fitting in right now, or what's happening. Or it's, I don't think your effort was where it needed to be last night. We need you to pick it up the next game. That's what they need all the time. So it doesn't have to be a long sit-down meeting, but you have to make sure you give them that feedback all the time. So there's going to be a lot of that, not just from me, the rest of the coaches as well.
Positive reinforcement. Yeah. It's not an entirely new concept in the world. No. But there's more of it.
There is more of it. It's taken hold for sure, and it's what the players want, a lot of them. And you're going to find there's still some guys that are, nope, I need you to tell me the way it is, and I need you to be very direct and upfront with me, which is the way it should be. But some guys can still handle the kick, but I find that more and more guys are not able to. And when you do kick, let's say a number of years ago, if you were hard on someone, you may lose them for a game or two, and then they'd bounce back and they'd be ready to go. Now you may lose them for 2 to 3 weeks before they get themselves back. And you can't have how competitive the NHL is now, you can't have that. So you have to find a way to get the guys at their very best all the time. And when they're struggling or not playing well, then it's our job as a staff to make sure we build them to the level that they need to. If it's a kick, we have to find a way to do it where they're going to recover as quickly as they can, because we need all of our guys. That's the way our team's built. We need them all to be at their very best.
Calgary Flames are in great hands. Ryan Huska, thanks for coming down. You're a busy guy. I appreciate it. Enjoy what's left of summer for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rod. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.